clear, this is all about your local.
This is all about doing stuff at the district level and even the school level. So this is as on your job site as you can get. So this particular slide talks about there's lots of different things that you can do to kind of go through a local process. But one of the things we want to make it very clear to you is because of how open and vague the law is, and as we talked about all the different parts of it, and you've heard some different places for opportunity, it really is up to what will work best for you. So some people really like a formal structure, and that's what this kind of outlines. Create an ESSA implementation team. There may already be a team or a committee of practitioners created at your district, so it might just be about getting on that team or getting somebody that you like on that team or whatever it might be. But so that's kind of what this slide is talking about. And Lynn, you have put this up on the Ed Communities, right?
It is on Ed Communities. If you go to the ESP Conference, I walked somebody through it. You're having trouble getting to it, but it is there now.
And so there's lots of these different things that we talk about, some very formal structure things that you can do. Creating an ESSA implementation team, making sure we're including parents, sending a letter to your school board requesting an ESSA meeting. We have a draft of a letter you can send to a school board, to your school board, so that you don't have to even create that on your own, making sure that you're there. Collaborating with your state team, making sure you know what's going on. And we have a lot of that in our heads. So like you can shout out states and we can give you some idea of what is or isn't going on, but that's not necessarily filtering down, or should we say up, from your district. So it really is about doing stuff at your district level. You can host an ESSA community briefing, which may seem overwhelming, but here's the purpose of that. It's to get people together to kind of think about what would be your vision for your ideal school. So when you get into that implementation model, what you're doing. Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question. Because when I went outside, I made a call to, where I'm at. I'm in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a call to one of the board members who I'm kind of close with, and they have no idea.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what type of information, or what can I get information back to bring back? Because I would like to stand up at the next board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And say what I need to say, but I would like to be not on my voice but I like to have facts and everything, because people say they may start questioning me. But is it any way I can get some type of material so I can educate them, because I just assumed that they knew about it.
Right.
And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So,
And if you go to getessaright.org, and that is in our resources, getessaright.org. Shelley alluded to the school board
Resolution.
I
Yeah.
was going to say referendum, and I knew that wasn't right. School board resolution, there's a copy. Basically, all you have to do on that is implement your school's name or your school district's name. And the whole thing is written for you, and you can adjust it the way you want it. There's also, on the same thing, is a list of talking points and a letter on how to address a school board. And so I actually did the same thing that you're thinking of, and we went on the community talking at the beginning of a school board meeting, and the teacher president and I went to the school board and presented ESSA. None of them had really known anything about the law.
They know nothing about it.
And so we'll go there in a little bit.
And also on that, I will tell you right now, the page is a little overwhelming. We have tons of resources. NEA is very good at creating stuff, okay? It's a little easy to navigate, and we will give you our contact information too at the end of this also. We've got a really great 11-page summary, so you don't have to read all 1,059 pages. There is an 11-page summary that was written by a lawyer, so it's a little lawyery, but it summarizes it well. And like Lynn said, there's lots of talking. We've got what we call one-pagers. So just like this is one of the one-pagers, for example, how to do local implementation. So on that website, there's a ton of stuff. But I mean, as soon as you said New York, I smiled a little bit because y'all ain't doing anything. So there you go. So you're one of my bad states. So I got a list. I know what's happening everywhere, and New York is like, Yay! I don't know. Yes, please,
I
Laura.
was gonna say, I know that we tried to start getting the team together
Uh-huh.
within our district
Mhm.
prior to when we did the marketing,
Uh-huh.
right? So tried to start doing that, and have tried a couple times since.
Okay.
And our district says Oregon Department of Ed is telling us to just wait. So they have like put their feet in the sand, and they're not willing to go to this.
Uh-huh.
So that's why we kind of jumped over and went.
And that's exactly it. Sometimes you've got to find the other ways to go around this too. And if what some people are finding is your local or your district says, oh, we'll wait to see what the state does, and the state says, oh, we're going to wait to see what the federal government says, which is still that Stockholm syndrome. It's still that we have to wait because we don't want to do anything wrong because we're going to be punished, okay? So really it's about, you know what, and this is the response that I usually give to states, to local superintendents or school board folks when they give me that, is I say, you know what, I appreciate that. And I understand that you might have to make some changes down the road if the state decides to do something, which most states aren't going to do something punitive. But I understand you might have to make changes, but I'm just so excited to get some things in place now that'll impact student learning and it'll help save our district money, that I think we should just start doing this right now. Seriously, it's a manipulate them. I can't say that enough, but it really is. They're so afraid of the past, and we have to understand and acknowledge that. That's where that comes from. They are so afraid of all they've known. All of your administrators, all they've known is, I have to fill in these boxes and check these forms and submit all of this paperwork because I have to make sure I'm following the mandates required under No Child Left Behind. That's all they've known. So they are so afraid, understandably so, of doing something wrong. And so it really is about honoring that, which is why you can't go in and say, well, you're stupid, you don't have to do that anymore. We want to make sure we honor where they're coming from too.
Well, and you're gonna find that in some places you're gonna take baby steps,
Mm-hmm.
and some places you're gonna take leaps and bounds. And so, whatever the course that you're taking, you have to celebrate your victories, no matter how big or how small.
So as you said, as we talked about, this is the very formal process for doing implementation. So this right here is the list of everything I can do without permission. I don't need anybody to tell me about this. I can hold a stakeholder town hall meeting. I can bring some folks together. This is what my friends in South Carolina and Louisiana has done a bunch of these phenomenal community stakeholder meetings. And they said, we're going to bring some folks together and we're going to say to them, what would your ideal school look like? And we're just going to get some ideas. The good news is they're going to say all the stuff you want them to say because they might not know our pretty little education terminology for it, but they do know their sons and their daughters. They know their kids, so they care. You can, of course, serve on an implementation team. Even if they say, well, you're not official. Well, I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to, I'm just here to help. Yeah. Meet with higher ed folks. The law says you have to work in partnerships with higher ed. You want to talk about people who feel left out of this? Who do you call? If you've got a local community college or something like that that's just down the road, who does the district call? They call like the dean. They call the head of it. You teach in a place that's got a big 4-year school. They don't call the practitioners. You've got people, you've got professors and adjunct staff that are desperate to be able to help and work on these things, that would love opportunities. Go talk to them. Visit parents at home. Just talk to them about your schools. Get them on your team. Talk with colleagues at a bar. We already talked about that one. Conduct a testing audit. I mentioned the testing audit before. Now, the testing audit is a formal thing that's mentioned within the law, but it's not like the law says you have to use Price Cooper Waterhouse to do this audit. No, it doesn't. That's not what it is. All a testing audit means is that the law suggests to you that every single school district should pay close attention to the types of tests that they give, pay attention for duplication, and the amount of time spent on them. But you all know there's more to it than that. Do your own. Do a survey. Maybe partner with your teachers. How much time is spent pulling kids out for intervention? So, how much time is spent retesting? How many kids lose recess? How many, et cetera, et cetera. Let's pay attention to the real impact of tests, et cetera. Get training on restorative practices. There you go. Just become the expert. Here's one. Talk about schools at a church event. Tell people at your school, hey, there's this new federal law. You know, parents and community should be involved in it. What do you guys think would be good for our schools? You go to church. Write articles for the local news about great things happening at your school. Nobody's been decimated more than local journalists. Okay? They need stories. We are horrible at talking about what goes right in our schools. Horrible at it. Let's talk about it. Have a party at your house. That's good for your mental health as well as the implementation of the law. Throw a party, invite people over, have conversations about this. But seriously, all of this stuff, you don't need permission to do any of this. Now, you'll need permission steps down the road. If you decide you're going to completely restructure your school day, yeah, you'll probably need some permission there. But you don't need permission to meet and have a conversation about it. People talked about how overcrowding is a big problem. I know for a fact, I know of an elementary school that used this law as a reason to sit down and say, we need to solve overcrowding. And they said, we don't have any more money for you. We can't hire any more teachers. We can't do this. And they sat down and looked at the schedule for the students as a team with their paras, with their food service, with the bus drivers, and they restructured the schedule in such a way that better utilized resource time and recess and the lunch schedule as a way of dealing with their overcrowding. They did it themselves within the current funding, within the current staff, just by being creative about how they organize stuff, okay? That's what the type of thing the law allows you to do. Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, we would like you to talk at your table. This is the first step. We had to focus on the negative. Now let's dream a little bit. What types of things would you see if you had the perfect school? What types of things would you see in that space? Talk at your table, come up with some lists, come up with some things. We're going to spend a good deal of time on this. Figure out what your dream school would look like.
So let's share out some of your hopes and dreams. This table, can you give us one of your hopes and dreams?
Better relationships between the students and teachers and staff.
So, that's a great one.
Because it makes me sad.
So, how do you envision that happening, and who would your stakeholders be?
It's like a stakeholders would be everywhere. The whole community, like not even just in the building, parents, community members, and I feel like the best way to do that would just be more open lines of communication.
So, we'll be talking about how to come up with an action plan to make that actually come to fruition. And so then we'll talk about the steps. Give us one more.
We have a really nice song here, I can't, the top one? The top one? Positive community environment.
And so that's again bringing in all the stakeholders. All right, over here.
Small class sizes.
Okay, so then maybe coming up with another schedule like Shelley was talking about, or coming up with innovative ideas on what your class or what your day might look like in your school or school district. What do you guys have back here for one?
We have flexible seating in all classrooms. And focused collaboration times between support staff and certified teachers.
So when you say flexible seating in all classrooms,
Just let Harry know.
maybe an explanation to everybody here would be?
Flexible seating, our district has went to flexible seating in the classroom. And at the beginning, it was very hectic until they got used to it, because of course, if you've never done it, you're not used to it. It's kind of like the school lunches, you know. What we did is we took out all the, we have a couple of desks, traditional desks in the classroom, but we took out the sitting in the rows and you have to sit in your seat because not all child learns the same, so they can't all sit the same. So we have all these options for them to be able to sit. They might be able to sit on the couch, they might be able to sit on the carpet, or they might be able to, some of them like to feel the smooth, cool tile, so they'll sit on the tile. Another one might sit in a scoop chair, another one might be on a bouncy ball. Or standing, the tall table standing, or the cafe where they're sitting up on the high stools. What it does, it gives them the option to choose how they're going to learn. And when you give them that choice, then the responsibility goes back on them. I have to make the choice. If I want to sit on this bouncy ball, I have to do it the right way. If not, I'm going to have to choose to go somewhere else. And it keeps the chattering down. It keeps the fidgeting down. The only problem that we have with it is the teacher giving up the power of the classroom, being the sole, leader, because it's more of a collaborative. You have to, it's just a different way of learning, and it's actually been very insightful.
I have that in my room and I love it.
We found, our district has it too, and part of what it's helped is create, when it's time to do productive group work, that environment makes it much easier for the kids to get into their small groups, to do their productive group work, lessons or learning, so, because it's not about moving desks around anymore, bring a group together or whatever.
So if you were a district that saw that and wanted to be your hopes and dreams in your district, you're talking about getting different kinds of furnitures, and so you'll have a whole different bunch of stakeholders that you're going to have and a whole different conversation that you're going to have.
And not only that, but you have to have everybody on board. Because the flex seating only works because if it, like you start with K and you do this to the kids, so you're like giving them a toy. You go to first grade and maybe one first grade teacher and the other one does it. Well, if you get this teacher, you get to keep your toy, but if you get this one, I'm taking it back. Maybe none of the second grade teachers do, so then you don't have your toy for another year. And then you get to third grade where you're expected to know a little more. Well, then you're giving your toy back and you're expected to know how to play with it properly. And you don't.
Starting all over again.
And so you're starting all over again. So if it's not consistent, it's not going to work.
I can attest to that because we were just talking about that. That's one wonderful thing about our building is over the last couple of years we've been building that. And we have a vast majority of our regular ed classrooms all have flexible seating now. And so they get it consistently from K through third grade, and there are more choices basically the older they get. So they kind of learn, well, we didn't have the exercise balls to sit on in kindergarten. That starts in like second grade. But they have the scoop seats, they have wiggle seats, they have desks on the floor, and so it kind of builds on it. And it's amazing how much it helps.
I mean, they've done things like teachers have done, like put crates and then made tops on them.
Yep.
And I mean, just
Yep.
invent it. You put cutting tennis balls in half and putting half tennis balls so that those those
They get
pressure
sensory
points
input.
and
Yep.
yeah.
So those are just the things that you put on somebody's wish list. So what do you guys have on here for what you would like to see in your schools?
Technology for every child and educators. This lady's talking about how there are many schools where there's not enough books for every child, or they're Xeroxing. So they're killing a lot of trees in order to get a book home, or at least a section of a book home to a child. We have educators who are asked to dig in their own pockets to buy the resources that they need for instructions in the classroom. So again, improving technology, and this gentleman who works with IT said improving the networks, the infrastructure of the schools to handle the technology that we're bringing into schools. You don't have a network that can handle that load, then what's the purpose of having all of these computers and tablets in your classroom? So it's not just upgrading our school, but modernizing the schools and making sure that we have appropriate resources for every educator.
Okay, and back here.
I'm going to be very unpopular right now because ours was limiting technology. Because we get in there and the kids come in with their phones, they're on their phones constantly, they're not paying attention. You're teaching a class, you turn around, they're on their Chromebooks looking at something else. They have no social skills. The whole thing is about building relationships, and I keep hearing that over and over. Relationships are the key. How are you going to build a relationship if you're constantly on a tablet or a phone or something like that? Let's get back to the basics. Some kids can't even write because all they know is the phone, you know what I mean? So then they're asked to write something, and they don't know how.
And if you do ask them to write, they write it in text language.
Right.
Yep.
I'm not saying that technology is bad, but it's something that needs to be limited. And I had a talk with my students. They're special needs high school and with severe moderate disabilities. And we had a talk with them and we said, you know, look, we're looking to get you guys into the workforce. And you get there, they're not going to allow you to have your phones out with you wherever you go. You're going to have to go periods of time without technology sometimes when you're out on the job.
Mm-hmm. Teaching them that responsibility that they need to have as they get into career-ready and work-ready situations.
The very, very back table, you do.
And back table. Hannah? What do you guys have?
We decided that we're not artists, but we gave it a shot. So happy and healthy students come there. It's a welcoming environment that we have. They have access to art, PE, music, library, career, and technical. They have dental and health care for all students that come into our schools. Nourishment, there's no more food insecurity with any of our students that we work with. They're safe, there's open communication, we have technology. We mentioned the dental health care meals. Class size, oh my. We love to see a class where it was like this and not like our horror story of 59 kindergartners in a full-day kindergarten classroom with a first-year teacher. We think there should be paper and pencils and computers that are available in all of our schools. So we just, if we can just get this done next week, that'd be great.
Excellent. All right, let's do it. There's not a thing that you put in the room that isn't attainable through use of this law. And that's something we want to make sure that you understand. It is going to require, it is going to require partnerships. That's come up a couple of times. So what we want us to really think about is how do we move this agenda? It's about figuring out what it is that you want to do. At the end of the day, every single thing you all said, it's about making sure that our students have a learning environment where they can learn. Our educators have a learning environment where they're able to help them on that path to learning. Like that's what we want. We want to make this world a great place for our students. And we have to make sure we're leading with that. Which is why the way that I phrased this slide is, it's not just about what it is that you want to do, like what is that end goal, but really making sure we're leading with the why. Making sure that that's part of this entire thing. Okay, so now we've talked about different things that you want to do. Now we need to move an agenda, okay? And when we talk about moving an agenda, there are two things we have to be very, very, very intentional about. Who's with you and who's not. And we're all very nice people. We're in the helping profession. We don't always like to say, that's why I love that you made the comment about some of them don't want you there, because we don't always like to say that, but it's true. When we say, well, when we go to the flexible seating, we've got to make sure that every person is with us. We need to be explicit about who is not with us, okay? So the next step that we're going to go to is twofold. We're going to ask you just to use the back side of your paper. We want you to basically make two columns. Who's with us and who isn't. And really think about this. When you talk about all those great things that you want for your schools, who might be with you? And the reason we want you to talk about this at your table, even though you're not necessarily like the same states or the same districts for right now, is to start to think about even archetypes or types of people that might be with you or might be against you that maybe you haven't talked about before. There are some obvious people that are on the plus and negative list. But really think about who do we think we can get with us, and it's okay to say names. And who do we think is probably going to be against us, and it's okay to say names. Because we're going to anticipate that your next step is going to be you're going to go home and do this with some folks that you're hanging out with, that are with you and your team or in your union or whatever else it is. You have to be explicit about the people that are against you. It's not fun, but you have to in this planning stage. So we're going to take a few minutes. Let's figure out who's with us and figure out who's against us. All right. Volunteer.
Okay. I don't mind that.
All right, we're going to bring it back together.
I understand that.
All right, we're going to start with this table here. Give me one positive person that you have on your list.
Young teachers.
Young teachers. Give me one negative on your list.
Teachers near retirement.
Teachers near retirement. Okay, so when you're looking,
Yeah, call them out. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right.
You have to.
so who on your positives or within your community can talk to somebody on your negatives that could possibly improve that negative to being more positive?
Maybe parents, maybe Board of Education people. Because
Okay.
the teachers are gonna have, a different attitude towards the Board of Ed than younger teachers will.
Okay, so what we're looking at and what we're talking about now is how are we going to find the place where your positives can directly affect your negatives. Give me one of your negatives.
Federal administration.
The new what?
I know you said specifics, but I would have had no more room.
We have a good name for that. You want to share our name?
Oh, our
People against your name.
Just this one person.
All right.
Oh wait, you're recording this?
With 2 cameras.
Do you have anybody on your positive side that could influence her?
Probably not, but I think my favorite one that might make the most impact on the positive side would be the students.
The students. Yep. And I think parents. When things were going down and they were looking to actually get her in place, the amount of phone calls and the amount of parents and community members that came out of the woodwork and made those phone calls, tweeted the tweets, emailed, all of the social media that came around that federal administrator, that is what stopped some of all that. It slowed it down. And so even though it might not always get you to exactly where you want it to be, it's going to get you closer. And so you might not always get completely there. You're going to be having an influence.
But with that said, even after the you say, okay, well, she's in there now, just deal with it. Well, those same parents, those same people that was tweeting it out, we need them to still be tweeting stuff so that she can understand that, hey, I just can't do what I want to.
Exactly.
But this is what happens. People kind of just like, well, whatever, and they kind of fall out.
Yep.
But we have to keep them engaged and say, hey, we still need you.
It's still a problem.
So that's the deal, and I think that's where we fall into the slumps as opposed to not keep moving, because it'll cause people to change their minds.
Yes, it will.
Right.
So
And so promoting the small class sizes,
Yes.
promoting the things that are important to you in the classroom, those are the type of the things that we want to tweet out, and we want to send those messages to our federal government and our state government.
Yes.
And so the more they know, when they're making these laws at the state and local level, then we can have some influence there. What is one of your negatives?
Chief fiscal officer.
Okay, so who on your positive can influence where the money could be driven?
Other unions.
Okay. The superintendent.
Human resources director.
All right. So you're always going to be able to find someone from your positive side that's going to positively affect the person that's on the negative side.
Yeah, never count them out. And so that's why part of this is when you get to working on this stuff really at your site or your local, and you've got a struggle that we're going over, we're using the law to move past it. The more explicit you are, like you actually have names because you're from one district, so that works out well. The more explicit you are about it, you may have that one school board member, Gary Kucinich in my school district, that's his name. His name is Gary Kucinich, who is very bad and is anti-absolutely everything. Well, it turns out that he used to play pool with a good friend of my husband's. So there you go. So like sometimes it's like these weird relationships where you are manipulated. There's that word again, but we're utilizing those relationships. And then there's one other thing I want to say to you. Never assume somebody who's against you is permanently against you. You can. There's always a way to work with it. Trust me. My congressman is Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. All right. So, and I meet with his staff weekly. I'm not giving up. So there you go. We'll influence him, and or I'll just knock on the door a lot. All right. So, anyways, so we wanted you to do this activity. One, to be able to see these things, but two, to think about some unusual groups. We don't always think about our churches. We don't always think about some of the volunteer groups. I saw somebody wrote the Chamber of Commerce. Federal Chamber of Commerce doesn't like us, but our local ones sure do. Like, you know what I mean? Using those local businesses, those local relationships, those local places that you go. These are people that can be allies with you. They can be part of your team. They can be stakeholders that you reach out to, that you bring into meetings. They can be people you just go to have conversations with. Listen to them. Make sure you're involved in them.
And don't forget your specialty, your autism groups. Anybody that's working with any of the dyslexic groups or any of the AODA groups. Those are groups that you don't want to forget as well.
So unfortunately, we're not going to have as much time to go into all of this as we'd want to. So we'll kind of talk through this a little bit. We're going to give you a little bit of time to figure some of this out. We want you to think about tactics. And tactics are steps that you can take. Now, here's the problem with tactics. Somebody says, oh, we'll go talk to the school board. And everybody's like, that's great. And then you move on. And you never figure out exactly what day you're going to go talk to the school board, who's going to be the person that's going to do the speaking, what is the speech going to be about, and what is the intended result. So these 4 questions, right, like these things right here, you can come up with a great action. You can come up with a brilliant idea. You can say, we're going to all wear red and release red balloons, and we're going to dye doves red, and we're going to have this big sit-in for public education. We're from Wisconsin. We know about sit-ins for public education. We're going to have this big thing, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be great. And then that's it. Like that, you have this talk about it. And have you planned who's going to be in charge of each of those steps of the process? Have you planned who's going to talk to the different people involved and who's going to communicate with them? Have you chosen a date, location for that? Have you, most importantly, figured out a desired outcome? Often we think about different things that we can do, and we can say, we're going to get together, we're going to talk to some folks, but we haven't figured out that last piece. We need to be able to reflect and go back on it, because not every tactic is going to get you where you need to go. Not everybody's going to be able to go into that bargain and use ESSA and get the end result you hoped for. And that's why we talked about there's probably a couple steps, several steps some of you have to do to get to some of these dream scenarios that you've come up with. So when you go into tactic planning, and now this is on Ed Communities, and we'll make sure it's on the app later, make sure you're going through these different questions. Make sure that you're planning for a desired outcome.
Well, and when she talks about desired outcomes, think about the kiddos that you work with in your school every day, and you're setting those limits, and you're giving them choices. Sometimes you can give somebody 2 choices, neither of which are undesirable outcomes, but then they have that choice to pick, and that choice becomes stronger. So they may think that they are picking the one that best suits them, but the truth of the matter is that it suits you as well.
And you've also subtly manipulated them into giving them a false sense of power. I'm just saying. Added bonus. The biggest thing is this. There's nothing you've come up with that isn't accomplishable. You've already come up with lots of people that are with you, and I guarantee you more people are with you than are against you. And it really is about saying to them, in some cases, these are people you've never talked to before. Maybe you've never talked to these businesses before about your schools, or you've never talked to your teachers before about what's going on with your work in your world. Maybe you've never talked to them, and you get to use, this is the most beautiful thing about this law. You get to say, you know what? I know we haven't talked before about schools, but there's this new federal law that really is making it so that we really should be talking. Sure, the law passed a year and a half ago, and sure, you could have talked to people at any time about schools, but use it as your excuse for never having had that conversation before, so that nobody can say to you, how come you've never asked me before about what I think about schools? You can say, well, you know, the law just passed. And you can even say, well, we weren't allowed to talk to you. Of course, in your parish in Louisiana, you probably weren't allowed to talk to anybody, but you can use the law as your excuse to help you with organizing, to help you with that outreach, to help you with all those pieces. So, all right, so we wanted to make sure we allowed time for anything that's on your mind. Burning questions, burning comments, burning thoughts. Go.
I have just a comment.
Go for it.
When I was thinking about these different groups, as a local president, with these people that I've talked to, or some of these, I have to approach them at different levels, because some of them might think that I'm part of a union and all we're worried about is healthcare coverage and union dues and that. They don't realize the advocacy that we do for our students. And I think we have to educate them first before we can go on. And everybody's on a different level. We have to be aware of that.
You're so right. There's a piece in this process that if we were to spend a day doing an action plan, where after we figured out your allies, and you would actually break into why are they an ally, what is the best way to approach them, what is it that you have to lead with. And that's why one thing, we all know that we're about students first. We know that that's our world. I know that when I go in to talk to my charming congressman and say, we're really worried about charter schools, what he hears is, you're worried about somebody taking jobs away from public schools and decimating your union. I know what I mean is, I am sick and tired of seeing you using charter schools as another excuse for more institutionalized segregation and a way to hurt black and brown kids in southeastern Wisconsin. I know that that's what I mean, but if I haven't led with that, if I haven't led with, this is about students and making sure, it's implicit in all that we do. It is not implicit in the rest of the world. That's why we have to lead with that. You are absolutely right. That's why there's a line that I always hear that says, when you paying attention to how you introduce yourself, what's the first thing that you say? Of course, nobody knows what it means to be a member of the NEA Executive Committee anyway, but I always say, I'm a high school English and drama teacher. People have some idea of what that means. Some idea. Admittedly, the word paraeducator is still very confusing to the rest of the world. You've probably had to explain it about 7,000 different ways. I love that you just say teacher. That's the way to do it, because that's what you are. But anyway, so yeah, it is absolutely that. Any other questions? Please.
I just wanted to make a comment on what she just said. Our UNICEF director, when we first started out, she said, you've got many different hats, and when you go to talk to, like your principal, you tell them, okay, I'm coming to you as a peer educator, or I'm coming to you as a union leader.
Right.
Just make it known what you're coming to them.
Absolutely. Lead with that. Okay. So, we want to make sure we point this out to you. There is some money available in the land of NEA to help you with some of these activities. Our Great Public Schools grants are intended to help you do things that are creative and innovative in the improvement of student learning. Anything else? Roxanne asked you to put this in here. So.
Yep, and so the grants range from $50,000 to $250,000. They're 3-year grants. You do have to go through your state affiliate. They're not gonna come to a 30-member local and give you $250,000. So you do need to go through your state and local. Call Jessica Brinkley at ESPQ, and she will walk you through the process. Last year, only 2 groups wrote ESP grants for the GPS grants. There's a lot more money out there, folks, where you can implement some of this stuff.
Can you give just like an overview of what that grant money can be used for?
Wisconsin just got one, and what we're doing is building ESP locals. And so we've actually have a design team, and the whole project is funded through this grant process.
That's this one.
Yep.
And there's 2 separate grants mentioned up here.
Oh.
So that's okay. The GPS grants are specifically site-based, so the thing, or can be school-based. So some of them, I've seen some that are about structuring new evaluation systems for all professionals, but a lot of them are teacher-based. Your flexible seating thing would be the type of thing where you would identify a problem within the district and how that would be a change that you could do. So yeah, those are more, so we have, the GPS ones are very school-based, about student improvement, and then the other ones, the local partnership grants, are about working with, like Lynn said.
Yep.
Yeah, please.
Our state, we have 700 ESP, but we have a larger group. And I've had a lot of teachers in the past who were career educators from different counties, and they don't have for their ESPs. So with like the partnership grant there, like I know that you have to get to be recognized by the school district to be
In Indiana, yeah.
affiliated.
There's a vote that has to happen of potential members, so it's a whole other thing. There is another grant area available called organizing grants. Seriously, we've got things going on at NEA.
Yep.
Yeah. An organizing grant would help specifically with that, but also look into the way, and I cannot remember the way the law is specifically structured in Indiana. I think you're allowed to do this, so I'm trying my best to remember this part of the law. Often, ESPs, at least in some classifications, can actually join the standing teacher unit as well. So there's a way to be able to do that, and most of our states have what are called wall-to-wall locals that allow that to happen. So that's a place to at least get started. But I'm going to say this to you just about your state. You guys just passed a major point. You're on the plus side, you're growing, you're doing great stuff. This is a perfect opportunity to start to expand and do some of this work. So we can talk about that later. That's
Yep.
ESP organizing specific. But we just wanted to point out to you that there are some different grant and funding opportunities available. And here's the website we told you about earlier. We wanted to make sure you have that. So you have resources. And now I'm going to give you a fun one. My email, which is not on the screen, is skrajacik. Yep. Okay. It's SKRAJACIC. It's also in like 7 places in your program, my name. So it's skrajacik@nea.org. And Lynn, if you want to write up yours. Look at that. You have such nice handwriting. I have high school teacher penmanship. I never write on a board. So seriously, if you have a question, we can at least help you get to the right place. We'll try to keep posting stuff in communities. We're there for you. We know that some of what we're asking you to do may seem overwhelming, but it's not. And you have partners you've never thought about before that are there to help you. So don't stop lack of knowledge of the law keep you from implementing the law. Don't let lack of knowing keep you from doing, okay? Please.
And
yes.
proceed till apprehended.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes.
Laura wanted to share stuff too. Absolutely. All right. And with that, we are done. Perfect timing. All right. Thank you all very much for coming today to learn about ESSA. Yay.